Finding your gun right where you left it. Here's your relook at the NECA Toys Robocop version 2 with spring-loaded leg. Ready for more Robocop reviews? Before we get a closer look at the Robocop version 2 with spring-loaded leg, how about the first thing we do, as we always seem to do in these reviews, is to bring in my ruler, just to show you guys how tall the figure is. Like before, in the previously looked at Robocop, this version of Robocop is 7¼ inches in height, or about 18½ centimeters tall. Like the Robocop we had looked at before. Yes, in case you had missed it, we just recently had a look at Robocop figures from before, sliding over the one that has the leg holster to bring in the previously looked at one just before that. These Robocop figures date back as maybe about 9 or so years. That's when we initially looked at them here on this channel. While they may look similar, if not carbon copies to one another, the one, though, on the right, the one that we are about to have a look at in this video, does have now the benefit of a spring-loaded leg, where it can holster the Auto 9. But there is also one other change that I did notice, and may have been also something I pointed out when we first had a look at these two figures. Currently, for the figure's accessories, you may only be looking at the interchangeable arm that has the data link spike on the end of it, and may be asking yourself then, where's the Auto 9? It's inside of his leg. We're going to look at that in a second. In the meantime, though, let's look at the data link arm, which isn't really that much different from the one that we got with the original Robocop. Now, apologies in advance. When I first looked at these figures, I bagged them away, and I think that I bagged the proper arms with each of the figures. You may notice the one that came with the first Robocop, or vice versa, is that this one does have silver where the spike sticks out, whereas this one actually is just black. And I think this is the one that came included with the leg-holstered Robocop, and this was the one that came included with the initial Robocop. But it doesn't seem too much different from one another. If anything, I would say the original Spike that we looked at has a more shinier-looking arm. This one is a little bit more matte and finish. One thing I did notice about this particular Robocop, we're going to go ahead and pick this one up. Why do I always have these figures so far away from me? Is while removing the arm, I had a real tricky time doing it with the first Robocop that we revisited a couple of videos ago. This one I don't have as much the problem, and I think they've actually used a different type of plastic. Why I say that is before I would have had to twist the other arm on that other Robocop in order to remove this one I can easily just bend off. It feels almost as if, while not squeezing and be able to prove it, it does almost feel like the plastic is a little more rubberier. And maybe that's one of the reasons why this data link arm is a lot easier to put back in place. It still involves a lot of pressure, mind you, but I can easily get this arm on, or a lot more easier at least than the other Robocop we got before, and I have no problems at all. The other Robocop, in fact, I had to go back and even heat it with a hairdryer, and even then that wasn't enough at the time that the video started shooting. I just couldn't get the arm back in place. I didn't definitely want to break the spike off in the process. As you can certainly see here, it was a lot easier to change out the arm. And even though this is probably not going to be the way I'm going to display this Robocop, because again, this one does have the benefit of the leg holster, I do like the fact that at least this one, it seems material-wise, see, like right there, that's a lot easier. It's not as dense of a plastic as the other one we looked at earlier. And again, popping the arm in, super simple. Of course, the main sell and draw of this one, especially if you had already picked up the other Robocop and thought, well, do we need a double dip? The answer is yes. A resounding yes. We do need a double dip, because this one actually does possess the spring-loaded leg. See, there's a little button here on the back that when you press that, it actually opens up the holster. And one of the downsides of this is that this part is always super loose. It never really stays properly in place. You can see it's a little floppy, but at least it does spring open, and I haven't at least broken it, knock on wood, yet. And inside the leg is the holstered Auto 9. The Auto 9 just pulls out, and I'm just going to show you what it looks like inside. Is the inner cavity of Robocop. Quite ingenious, really, when you think about that. This figure is almost now 10 years. It might even be 10 years old now. And the fact that they were able to craft this, you can kind of see, some of it doesn't quite stay together. Like there's a clip right here that I think, for all intents and purposes, is supposed to go against this little bar of plastic, and it always sits really super loose. I have also noticed, too, that there's a little bit of, I don't know if you can see it also there, there's a little hook or a little pin, a little C bracket that holds this part of plastic together. And it's always the part that comes loose. And every single time I put it back in place, there, see, you can see it right there. See the little C clamp? and this part is supposed to sit inside of it. Every single time I do that, every single time I open it at least, it looks like there's a little bit of marring to the plastic. And I hope it's not going to break over time. But anyways, at least the leg does open up. Quite an ingenious gimmick, the way that they were able to incorporate it. The the Robocop Auto 9, I'm going to show you guys what it looks like right now. And I'm going to bring in the original Robocop Auto 9. Not too much different, really. But again, I sort of feel it's the case where the Auto 9 that was released for version 2 Robocop is a little more matte. It's not as shiny of a black that was with the original Robocop release. Now again, you can fit this into his hand. And even with the leg holstered like this or opened, get the Auto 9 into his hand. At the time I was really displaying these figures, I was really most of the time just keeping the leg open. Because the gimmick is so good of a function that they incorporated to the figure, I really like the idea of just being able to display Robo. And you can kind of even have it as if Robocop has just drawn his gun. That looks super cool. And of course, when it comes to closing this, I would probably recommend not closing it by this side, as this is the side that always seems at the end be really, really loose. Oh, there we go. Get it back in there. To close it, though, what I would recommend certainly is to close it on this side. This is the side that has the main lever. If you push it on this side, then you're pushing against plastic that probably isn't meant to be pushed, and you may break it off in the process. When you're done, you just sort of fold this in, and everything else kind of snaps together. Just kind of really resist the urge to push this part. And then, again, to just operate that, you're just going to press the button on the back. Auto 9, yeah, we'll go ahead and take that out of his hand because we already had a look at that. And, of course, we're going to bring in the other Robocop. Now, I did say at the beginning of this video that I thought some changes were made. And I'm not just talking about the fact that he does have the spring-loaded leg. It's more so also the fact of the head sculpt. And I'm going to shimmy over Robocop here to bring in the original Robocop. I don't know if you can actually even see it, but it does seem like the head sculpts are different from one another. One of my biggest disappointments of this figure, or criticism I certainly made, was the fact that you could see the little lower part of his nose sticking up, or sticking out. You could see the nostrils, and that ain't Robocop. Robocop should have had his helmet a lot lower than this. When we had looked at this figure, I may have deduced that some of it had something to do with licensing, that maybe one of the ways to work around the idea of not using Weller's likeness was maybe to incorporate the nose. But the nose did make the face, the lower face, look a little longer. If we look at actually now the newer Robocop, and only newer by just a little bit, see how the nose is almost completely gone. It's still there, but it's not to the extreme that the other one was. In fact, when you're actually looking at this Robocop, it's only really when you tilt it up do you actually see the nostrils of his nose. Whereas this Robocop, you didn't even have to tilt it up to see the nose. The nose is very, very easily there. It also stuck out a little bit. See, it's a little knobby on the end, where the version 2 Robocop doesn't have that. Very, very interesting. What, again, I would have thought would just have been a double dipping of the same mold and just changed the leg out. It almost, in fact, seems like it's a different head sculpt that they've used between the two figures. This one is much better of the two. Body-wise, doesn't look like there's much different between the two. If any points could be awarded, I think, to the version 1 Robocop, I think it would be for more of the paint. See how they've got a lot more of the blue airbrushing down below on his lower torso. The version 2 doesn't have as much of that, sadly. And it doesn't seem like... The arms do seem to be fair a little bit darker in color, but I feel almost as if the version 1 Robocop had, even especially when you're looking at the back of the torso, how much more blue gets afforded here, and how much less blue is actually here present on the other Robocop figure. So yeah, there is some positive points, at least to picking up the original Robocop, that I feel almost as if the paint is maybe just marginally a little bit better. But there's no denying the fact that that's a better looking head sculpt. Body-wise, all the same basic body build is going to be here and present on the Robocop. They haven't, of course, fixed the issues at all with the double hinges on the elbows. These earlier Robocops all still have single hinged elbows, which is fine. It just means that you can't bend the elbow any bit past the point of what you're looking at right now. We're going to look more at the articulation here on the second. Detail-wise, they're all still present here. Like, for example, you've got the OCP Police 001, which looks a little bit better, I guess. You can probably see it a little bit better when the lights... There you go, when the light's bouncing right off of that. Great looking head sculpt, though. There is room, yes, for improvement, but really, if you had the choice in front of you to get the original version 1 Robocop and the version 2 that had the spring-loaded leg, I would say if the costs are the same, get this guy. This is the better of the two. So super excited to have got other Robocop coming out very, very shortly, in fact, by NECA Toys. But again, yeah, really nice sculpted details on this. The lower torso, once again, I feel is just the plastic color. And if anything, they probably have painted the shell of his body, the actual silver paint. It's nice sculpting also on his arms. I don't know if I may have also mentioned when we looked at the initial Robocop that I noticed his other arm didn't swivel, and it may have just been the case where the arm was just so tight from being packed away that I just couldn't rotate it. But even though this is the arm that you're going to be changing out for the data link spike, this arm also does have the swivel. It just doesn't have any bit of additional articulation in the wrists. Again, down the side of his leg also has the OCP001. Really nice tech details that they've sculpted into the body here. I don't mind the fact either that they've got this very obvious point that sticks out to, of course, operate the leg. It has to be there for the reasoning of even having the gimmick work in the first place. And plus, too, you're also going to be probably looking at the figure like this. You're probably not going to have it spun to the side. I can't make that assumption that that's how you're going to be posing a figure, but it doesn't bother me at all that that part's sticking out. At least it is the same coloring, close enough, same coloring to the rest of his body. And then, of course, you've got the pistons on the backs that do work just as well as they did on the original figure. But when you are moving the feet back and forth this way, the pistons work along with it. And that's a really nice touch. Yeah, just a great looking Robocop. Again, I feel like not dated really at all, especially this one. This one, if I really, again, only had the money and both of these figures were in front of me at the time, I would have only then picked up this figure and probably not have picked up the version 1. It was probably a good idea that they released the version 1 for obvious reasons, that this one does make very much vast improvements, fixing the leg issue, and of course, incorporating a brand new different head sculpt, which looks much better, I think, to a better looking Robocop likeness. Let's talk a little bit about the articulation now in version 2 Robocop. His head rotates, of course, all the way around. It's still going to be the same, even though the sculpting appears to be different. The head still bends down, bends up, and back and forth. Keeping in mind how old this figure is, what, 9, 10 years, and still the amount of articulation that they've managed to incorporate into it. The arms still sadly only hinge out to about a 45-degree angle bend. I don't think they're going to be able to fix that either, unless they're able with the newer Robocops to have some sort of socketed joint where you can pull the arm a little bit more out, where you then be able to bend it a lot more than this. Just by the sculpting of the way that they've done the shoulders anyways, I don't think there's a way to really pull off a newer Robocop with any more than a 45-degree angle bend in the arms. But yeah, the arms do rotate all the way around. Figure does only still have, sadly, a single hinge in the elbow. No rotation here, but he does have rotation in his forearm. Figure has an upper torso ball joint. Figure has a waist swivel, which was one of the things I did mention with the other Robocop we looked at before. Didn't seem to have a waist swivel, but again, I think I can chalk it up to just the fact that the figure's been packed away for so long, sitting in a tote in my basement. Probably just the joints became really tight, and I gotta feel like it still had the swivel on the other Robocop figure. Legs split out to only about there. I know. It's not a lot, but it's at least it's something. You're not going to be doing splits on Robocop or high kick karate kicks. Legs rotate back and forth this way. And of course, when it comes to knees, the knees do bend. It seems also with both of these cases that the Robocop does have like a ratcheted joint in his knees. I certainly feel that when I'm moving the knees back and forth, that there seems to be like little ledged points. It hits a point, it hits a point, it hits a point. Well, no more point than just that. And of course, when we already looked at the feet do hinge back and forth this way. An ankle pivot. And like with the other Robocop, there is no toe articulation, which is probably something that they're going to, I would imagine, incorporate into the newer Robocop figure that we are going to be getting very, very soon, in fact. Once again, there's the version 2 Robocop, and prior to that, we also looked at the Robocop version 1. Yeah, I mean, again, from like the neck down, excluding, of course, the side holstered spring open thigh piece, I think they're pretty much carbon copy figures. From the head, though, the heads seem different, and it can't just be my eyes playing tricks on me. The head does look visibly different. I mean, even like looking at it from a distance like this, doesn't the version 1 Robocop head look much more stretched? Whereas the Robocop, the version 2, seems to have a better proportioned head sculpt. So again, if you had the money, of course, this would probably involve us time traveling because the cost of these guys right now are probably like sitting $200 to $300, no fooling, online. If you had gone back in time and both of these figures were in front of you, I would certainly have recommended more so to get the version 2 Robocop because, of course, it does benefit from the spring holstered leg, which is really the biggest selling draw of this figure. But also it did have a better head sculpt that if you didn't get the chance to find the version 1 figure, no harm, no foul. And I don't feel like you're really going to be disappointed either, unless you're a diehard Robocop collector and you need to collect anything and everything that's ever come out for Murphy. I think it's fine just to pass on the version 1 Robocop. And instead, if we never got ourselves the ultimate Robocop that we are going to be getting soon by NECA Toys, source out, if anything, the version 2 Robocop, or if anything, source out the Robocop 3 figure that's going to have pretty much the same stuff of what we got here, the same building blocks of body, but a much darker blue color scheme, a figure I really do like. Whenever you go back to a tote that you had all your figures stored away, one fear that always falls on you is, as I'm rummaging through the figures and I find the one I was looking for, what state, what condition is this figure going to be in? My biggest worry when it came to looking for Robocop version 2 was, did the spring holstered leg break at all over the time that I've had it stored away? Luckily, knock on wood, it hasn't. Although I've already noticed the several times that I have opened and closed the leg, that it does feel like it's a little looser than it was when I first looked at the figure, 9 or so years ago. And there's definitely an issue that's going to be a problem. That little clip piece that holds the side part of his leg looks like there's a little bit of marring that's done to the plastic. There's a little stress mark left on that clip. And that is the thing that's really holding that part of his leg together. So I would certainly say if you already have this figure in your collection, or maybe now trying to track down one, I don't know why you would be tracking down a version 2 Robocop, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you are. Just be careful when it comes to opening and closing that leg, that especially when it comes to closing the leg. Close it from the front flap, don't close it from the back. The front is the part that works with the gimmick, the spring lever. The back is basically just clipped on in place. And if you're forcing against that, that's the part that's definitely going to break. But like I said, I'm just relieved finding this figure now years later that part of the figure didn't break off. Again, if you are looking to track down these figures still to this day, price points on these figures have gone up quite a lot. Now, that's based on also the idea that there hasn't yet been a Robocop figure that's been released right after the Robocop 3. Yeah, there was also the Robocop versus Terminator, but if you're the purist and want to try to track down an original-looking Murphy, Robocop 3 was the last figure I think that NECA Toys did release based on this design. So yeah, if you were to be tracking down figures like this, you'd be looking at sealed figures sitting at around that $200 to $300 price point. I'm sure that will be changing soon, as NECA Toys is slated to release several different Robocop figures. There's a battle damage version, there's going to be the version that has his chair, and there's going to be like the stock Murphy Robocop that's going to have the swappable head sculpt, which we finally now have, or will be getting, a Peter Weller likeness. I don't think this one is that bad, really, when all things are considered. I mean, this one, it definitely has an improved head sculpt that looks a lot better than the version 1 that we got before. So if just assuming, looking at this figure, that, yeah, well, it's just the same figure as the version 1, it's just got a different leg. It doesn't just have a different leg, mister. It's also got a different head sculpt as well. What do you guys think of version 2 Robocop with the spring holstered leg? I think most people that probably have Robocops in their collection probably just didn't get the version 1 and instead got the version 2, but a decent looking figure still after all this time. How many years ago we actually looked at this figure on this channel. But what do you guys think of it? Let me know down below in the comments section. And if you are super excited for the new upcoming Robocop, also let me know down below in the comments section. But hey now, if you are new to this channel, just stumbled onto it maybe through these Robocop reviews as of late, if you're enjoying, I hope, enjoying the content, make sure you're hitting the subscribe button, new member to this channel. And make sure as well you're turning on the bell notification so you get those friendly reminders. We have wrapped up reviews now for Robocop version 1, Robocop version 2 with spring holstered leg. I have a sneaking suspicion, and being the fact that I'm also the person making the content, it's a good guarantee that we are also going to be looking at the Robocop 3 Robocop, which I think is the best, from a cosmetic standpoint, I think it's the best Robocop that NECA has released, up to the point of getting the ultimate Robocops. Super, super, super excited for that. As always, guys, thanks for watching, as you always do. Stay tuned to this channel, because there definitely will be a lot more NECA reviews coming your way. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.